Welcome on into the Utah Blockcast. I'm Steve Bartle, Utah Insider for KSL Sports. Going to be back with you on a Monday, and it's a special Monday because it's officially game week for Utah football, kicking off the 2025 season this weekend against the UCLA Bruins. Also a special Monday episode because a special announcement, something that's been in the works the last little bit. Have had some fun conversations with him and excited to have him joining the Utah Blockcast this season. I'm excited to introduce the newest member of the Utah Blockcast, Josh Bennett. Josh, appreciate you joining the Utah Blockcast. From myself to you, I have a ton of respect for what you've done, what you've accomplished, the work that you've done the last couple of years, building a community on Twitter the way that you have, and fostering just a strong sense of community with the Utah fan base. It's been really special to watch it grow, and I'm fired up and honored to have you joining the Utah Blockcast this season, man.
Hey, thanks, Bartle. It's an absolute honor to be here. If you're on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Glass Half Ute, you might know me. You might recognize this voice from those Utah spaces. Been talking with Bartle the last little bit, and honestly, it's an honor to be here. Very thankful. Looking forward to talking ball with you, and hopefully bringing some good stuff to the Utah football family.
No, I think you'll do that pretty easily, man. So don't want to talk too much. Just want to get into the conversation here on the episode. I'm excited for what we've got planned, and we are planning on doing a couple episodes every week, which will be great for Utah fans. But let's get into the episode, into what we want to talk about. And on today's episode, obviously, we're going to recap the action from week 0. There were 3 Big 12 programs that played this past weekend, and one of the biggest rivalry games in the Big 12, Farmageddon. And so we'll dive into what we learned from those games, and then also we're going to talk about sort of our big picture view and what how we view the Big 12 and how we view Utah and their place in it, and where they could potentially what their ceiling is, what their floor is. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun to dive into. But first, before we get into to all of that, I wanted to take a couple minutes just to sort of wax poetic about the game, and obviously getting college football back on the tube. It's such a special time, and it's such a special experience. I don't know, man, like having college football back on your TV screen on Saturdays. It really was just kind of fun, man. You get the text from the boys and saying, what do you got plans? You want to watch football this weekend? This is such an exciting time. And I wanted to dive into, why we love college football so much, why we love Utah football so much. And, I think that's a great way to introduce you, Bennett, and what you're sort of just how you view the game. And while we're talking, I'm going to pull up some responses. I put out a question asking people why they love the game, why they love Utah football, and a lot of the responses are just really, really cool. So Josh, stage is yours, man. The mic is yours. Have at it.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I've been obsessing over football since before I can even remember. It's always been an outlet from this crazy thing we call life. Kind of give you a little bit of my background. My grandfather really wanted a son, but when daughter number 4 came to be, my mom, he kind of just said, screw it. You're going to Yankees games with me. You're going to New York Giants games with me. And as a result, I grew up with an absolute sports obsessed mother. We got season tickets to the Miami Dolphins in 1997. My grandfather would take my mom, my brother, and I to the games. And it was kind of a joy in an otherwise dark upbringing. I've been through a lot in my life, and sports have always been a distraction and an outlet. And it wasn't until a little later on that college football kind of came into the picture, though. I was a freshman at the University of Utah in 2008. It was a pretty significant year for us. I watched the Utes, and I went to the games to start the season, but it wasn't until that week 6 when Oregon State came to town that I absolutely got just captivated by college football. The Beavs came to town after just beating number 1 USC. We won in thrilling fashion, scored 11 points in a minute and a half to win the game. We stormed the field, and really the rest is history. So I kind of fell in love with college football at the same time as I fell in love with the Utes. And it was only fitting that I found myself rooting for an underdog punching itself up in weight class. I love Utah, what it stands on, the family, all of the intangibles. It's built on grit and hard work and loving one another. Nothing's bought, everything's earned. And I love that. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
who I like to think I might be. But yeah, man, love football, love our Utes, and love talking about it.
Yeah, dude, that's great. And I think a lot of people, that sort of resonates with people, the earned, not bought, the sort of toughness, the blue chip, the not the blue chip, but the white collar mentality, bring your work pill type of attitude to, life and all that. I think that resonates with a lot of Utah fans, right? And I think the reason why I love, college football is, every little detail matters, right? All of the hours that go into these 12 Saturdays, right? Where you get to watch this team compete and go out for a chance to win. All the hours in January and February and March and April, all of those hours matter. All of the snaps, all of the reps that these guys get over the course of a year and over the course of their career does so much for them as football players, as people. And it's fascinating how true the saying is that it comes down to inches in this game, right? It's a matter of inches. And I remember, obviously a lot of great experiences, with Utah football. I had a similar experience going through a rough time in life. And so I had a lot of friends that used football as sort of a way to, get away from the difficulties of life. And, we bought season tickets together. Shout out to the prices. And so, a lot of great memories and a lot of great moments and progression in life have come from, going to these games, being there with your boys and being there with people that you genuinely love and appreciate. And I think that sort of unique dynamic, you're there with family and friends. And I'll tell you, man, every Saturday, we get to park. Yeah, I get a park where the media parks and all that. And that walk, from where I park and walking down, to the stadium, seeing the Rice Eccles Stadium banner, on the press box and seeing the backdrop behind it with Salt Lake City. I'm proud to be a Utahn and to have that, in the heart of Salt Lake City and in the heart of Utah, having, the University of Utah right there. It's just kind of something that I always look forward to on Saturdays. And it's a special feeling to see that almost every Saturday, we have these games. So there's a lot more that goes into, the emotion behind it. But I mean, you can see from all of these responses on Twitter, right? There is like family, friends, my dad, the connection with my dad growing up. And it is really, really special what college football means to all of us because it brings thousands, millions of fans together and are hanging on by a thread, right? we all can refer to a game in the past and based on what happened, right? Washington State, what was it, 2014? Just the dagger with Devontae Booker, Marcus Williams. I think that was his first start ever. And Washington State comes from behind. That's a game that I'll never forget because of the pain I felt. Oregon in 2016, Darren Carrington's toe tap at the end of the game. That one ruined a potential relationship for me because I was on a date for that game and I was just in a bad mood and I think ruined my chances with the girl. And I'll never forget that one. But then too, we've got the Pac-12 championships, and the joy and almost ecstasy that we felt being there, watching those games, man. Those are the moments, the Rose Bowl, right? All of those moments, it's just special. And it's awesome to be able to share that with so many like-minded people, but also people that come from different backgrounds and have these different stories. It's truly special, and why I love the game, and why I love Utah. It's just really really special to have this sport be what it is, and mean so much to us all. It's really, I'm just excited that it's back, and excited that in about 5 days we'll be watching Utah football kick off against the Bruins here, man.
Yeah, man. No, I love it all. Lot of really good points hit on there.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I am fired up, and we can, like, it's just, I'm excited, dude. So it's great, and again, appreciate everybody for sharing their thoughts and sharing kind of their experiences with the game. Have loved hearing more and more about everybody and their experiences, and I think it's something that we can all relate to. So appreciate everybody for sharing their thoughts and opinions on it. It really is, like, I think we're all just kind of excited for games to get going. So let's actually transitioning from why we love the game to actually talking about the games, right? We watched a couple games this weekend: Iowa State, Kansas State, Fresno State, and Kansas. Just a quick recap of Farmageddon. What did you think of that game being played overseas in Dublin? What, just quick thought, what did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, if let's just put it in the frame of Utah, I'd be down to go to Dublin and watch Utah play football if it's an away game. Has to be an away game because I don't
Yep,
want to get rid of
yep.
any of my Saturdays at Rice Eccles. And I
Major
want it to
key.
be against Notre Dame. I'd want it to be against the Fighting Irish. Like,
Ooh.
you know what I mean? I think that would be sick. I'd be all over that. I would travel for that. But if you're putting the Holy War in Dublin, that's
Yeah.
blasphemy.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's tough, dude. Like, shout out to the fans that made that trip, but man, I know Kansas State fans were kind of peeved that they had a home game taken away, and not just a home game, Farmageddon home
Yep.
game, especially now. I think I think Kansas State fans are going through it, and I think a lot of Kansas State people, the Johnsons family feud, going through it. It's a tough time to be Wildcat, man. It was tough.
Yeah, I saw a post from Stu, short for Special Teams U, a big K State account that I follow. I've chopped it up with in the spaces and whatnot. I'm gonna clean this up to keep it a little PG, but the post goes, I just wanted to win today, and all I'm seeing on Twitter now is Avery Johnson's father beating the snot out of his brother. Are we living in the worst frickin' timeline? That's
Yeah,
rough,
dude,
man. Rough.
that's rough. That's rough, dude. Yep. I can only imagine. Thoughts for the K Staters out there. But anyway, so recapping the game. Obviously, Iowa State defeated Kansas State 24-21 to secure their third straight victory in Farmageddon. And 5 out of the last 6, I think. So Iowa State, has some momentum in that rivalry game, and really impressive job by the Cyclones in how they went about winning that game, because it was ugly, it was sloppy. Obviously, the conditions, led to a lot of the sloppiness, but this game, man, I think really sort of encapsulated the spirit of the Big 12, what the Big 12 is known for, right? Through the first 44 minutes of action, it was a 7-7 game. And then over the last 16 minutes, the two teams combined to score 31 points. Just an incredible final quarter. And we finally got to see, the quarterbacks, Avery Johnson, Rocco Beck, play up to, I think, expectations, right? Both were struggling throughout the game. And yet I think they finally sort of found a rhythm, found a groove, and Rocco Beck doing a great job of leading his team, capitalizing on opportunities, capitalizing on turnovers by Kansas State, and getting his team, a few more points on the board than the bad guys. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters. But I really came away impressed with Beck, and just how he went about, executing throughout the game, and was really impressed. So obviously, plenty to take away from the game. What are your thoughts on Beck versus Johnson, and what were some of the difference makers in this game to you, Josh?
Yeah, and I just want to quickly say that game was like you know that meme where the horse is being drawn and it looks really good at the start and then it just gradually falls apart toward the end. Just flip that around. That was
Yep.
Farmageddon in Dublin. A lot of fun down the stretch, and um, yeah, what a way to kick off the college football season. In terms of the quarterback battle, I'm glad that I watched the game and I didn't just look at the box score and try to, BS my way through this like some people might, because the box score would tell you that Avery Johnson went absolutely gangbusters in Dublin and Rocco Beck looked like crap. That's not the case at all, though.
Right.
Having watched the two, I would say that Beck played the better game, made the bigger and tougher throws and some of those tighter windows. I think he throws a little bit prettier of a ball. I think there was some moments where Avery Johnson was strong. I really like that. To Avery's credit, I like that pump fake on that. It was 3rd and 3 with that 40-yard-ish touchdown pass
Yeah.
to Jace Brown. That pump fake, that safety just absolutely bit on it, thought that Avery might take off and run for the first down, and that freed up Jace Brown to be wide open and walk into the end zone. So that pump fake might be good for that kid, and that's something I want to see Dampier be able to do some of that, like yeah, and tuck it and run it a
Yeah, he's
lot
got
better
it.
than Avery Johnson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's got a little pump fake in him. We've seen that from
yeah,
him.
yeah. So um, that said, I mean, both quarterbacks had some brutal drops from both wide receivers and
Yeah.
tight ends early on. Things are wet and slippery, so you can say some of that. But I think these will still end up being two really good quarterbacks. I'm taking Rocco Beck there. As far as uh, other difference makers in the game early on, Kansas State's D line was super impressive. They looked really tough. They were getting a lot of pressure. They got to Rocco Beck 3 times in the first half. Credit to Iowa State for kind of cleaning some of that up in the second half. They only allowed 1 sack in the second half, but Kansas State looks like they have some dudes along that front. Toby Osunsami, I want to say is how you say his name, defensive end. He had a pair of sacks in the first half. They looked pretty tough, but really, if we're not giving a quarterback the game ball, it's going to Carson Hansen. Dude was an absolute freight train
Yeah.
down the road, down the stretch for Iowa State, and his ability to just pound that rock, Iowa State's ability to just keep churning out yards. That's what really drove home the W down the stretch, and that's where they were able to put the points on at the end.
Yeah, to your point, right? So the run game, it struggled for the majority of that game. It wasn't until, the as they got into the end of the third and into that fourth quarter where they really started to gain traction on the ground. And you could see it, in terms of the statistics. Obviously you could see it on the game, right? Getting stopped for 1 yard gain, that type of thing early on. I think in the first quarter they averaged zero point 0.8 yards per game. In the second it was like 2.1. In the third it was 3.1, and then in the fourth, because you stayed committed to it, you averaged 4.8 yards in that quarter alone, right? And so what's that look like? It looks like a 2 yard gain, a 3 yard gain, 7 yard gain, 15 yard gain, 15 yard gain, another 3 yard gain, and it's constant positive yardage, right? And that's the thing, is they just were able to continually matriculate their way down the field with these little, couple yard gains, make some plays through the air. But that was really, I think, the difference for Iowa State in this one, was that they were able to, you know, stay committed to the run game and gain that traction towards the end of the game. And obviously, if they clean up some of the coverage mistakes with the blown coverages that led to two wide open touchdowns for Kansas State, this is a totally different conversation with this game. Obviously, again, just the sloppiness, the turnovers. I think there were 13 punts and turnovers through the first 3 quarters, and then they finally got it going over the final quarter. But credit to Iowa State. I thought their experience, you could see the difference in that. Kansas State is kind of piecing together an entirely new secondary, and though they held up pretty well, that was an entirely new receiving core for Iowa State as well. And though we didn't get big answers from them in terms of what they're going to need to stay at the top of the Big 12, like they're going to need a guy to emerge, a dude. It was Iowa State taking advantage of opportunities down the field, Rocco Beck making some great throws. The fade ball to Donovan Sorsby, right? Sorsby, Dominique
Overby. Overby.
Overby. That's right, Dominique Overby. And just again, a really impressive. And again, to your point, the quarterbacks. If you're looking at the stats and you're looking at just that, it but you watch the game, it's a totally different tale. It was amazing to watch that game. Avery was, for whatever reason, just struggled throwing the ball with velocity. I think everybody was picking up on that. He just looked like a shell of himself. It was weird, but then he finally, got going in that second half and got it going there for Kansas State. Unfortunately, again, Iowa State just took care of business.
Yeah, and that game could have got, you started kind of touch on, that game could have got lopsided pretty quickly if it wasn't for those that busted coverage, and then kneeling it on the goal line on the 1 yard line. Imagine
Yeah.
imagine that your rival just kneels it on the 1 yard line on you. I don't know if that's ever happened before. Maybe in your own house or something like that. Also,
Yeah.
I feel like we have to talk about the bad beat there. The over-under on that was 51.5. 24-21 ended up being the final score, but if they didn't kneel that out and they did punch it in, or when when they went to review that, if that would have counted as a score, you would have went from an over-under that was dead in the first half at halftime, 14 points, even 21 points going into the fourth quarter. It just blew wide open in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So there's some people that rode that roller coaster. Not one of them,
And
but
again, that image, that snapshot of Hansen at the goal line, literally this
inches.
much of a difference.
You said
Crazy,
game of
dude. Think
inches.
about
Yeah.
yeah, dude, like just the amount of money that swung on that play, just insane, dude. Like that's wild. To get that right out the gate, Scott Van Pelt was just like, hell yeah, let's go, baby. So, anyways, obviously, you can pick apart the game, but did this game live up to the hype? Did it live up to expectations?
I think down the stretch we got there. I think the first half was about as much as you could almost expect out of
Yeah.
a week 0 game, rivalry game, going across the globe in the rain, like all sorts of just weird stuff going on. I feel like that train got on track, and it was a really entertaining game down the stretch.
Yeah, I agree. This, and if you go back in this, Aer Lingus College Football Classic, you go back in the recent history, it's been pretty chaotic, right? Last year, Georgia Tech, Florida State, a couple years ago, Northwestern and Nebraska. This game has produced some doozies, and they got another doozy on Saturday. Just a pretty wild game. So I think it lived up to the expectations there of the people in Dublin. The people that are enjoying college, their one game of college football live, and then I think too, it lived up to the expectations in terms of what we expect from the Big 12 and that rivalry. But again, make sure to read your weather reports prior to the game, and make sure we're on our P's and Q's there. So take note, Utah. Just be mindful of the weather, whatever it looks like in Pasadena this weekend. I think don't want that to be too big of an issue this weekend, which it should be. All right, let's switch gears. Kansas, Fresno State. I think this one was, I tell you what, man, Kansas looks. They look different. I'll say that much. They look different. This, I think still kind of in wait and see mode with Kansas, but certainly a 31-7 victory over Fresno State with Jalen Daniels playing the way that he did. Really impressed by what Lance Leopold has done there in Lawrence, Kansas with that program. And obviously, introducing a brand new David Booth, stadium with the renovations and all that they've done to that stadium. I think there's a lot of juice, a lot of energy around the program, and it was pretty apparent that within the program they've got some new vibes to that team, and I think that's going to be a pretty dangerous team this year.
Yeah, I mean their win total over under 7.5. I had them at 7-5, so pretty much right there on the underside.
Yeah.
I thought Fresno would actually make that a little bit tougher for them. I didn't really know what
So
to
did I.
expect of Kansas, but they went in and they took care of business. And honestly, they could have scored 50 if they wanted to. Kansas, they
Yeah.
let off the dogs later on in the game, but Jalen Daniels looks like he's back, and that's really the biggest question mark for Kansas for me. I hate to be cliche with quarterbacks, but it's just an important position. We know that all too well.
Yeah, 100%. So on the game, Jalen Daniels finished 18 of 20 for 176 yards. Not big production in that sense, but 3
Efficient.
touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Obviously, the 90% completion percentage, you'll take that every single day. And it looks like there's actually pretty good chemistry with that group between Daniels and that wide receiver, that receiving core. And that was something that I was curious about because Daniels has missed a lot of time this offseason, rehabbing and getting right for the season. But man, you wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference. Like you would never guess that he missed all the spring ball, that he's been dealing with injuries. That team looked pretty sharp. And I think there should be a lot of confidence in Jalen Daniels. I was pretty impressed with his performance and how well he threw the ball, the decisions he was making, the ball placement on a number of throws. He looked, like you said, like the Jalen Daniels of old, and looked to have regained, that 2022 type of form when he was just dynamic. And so, with him playing at that level, it definitely changes, I think, the conversation for the Jayhawks this season.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to wait till week 2. So they play Wagner week 1.
Right.
Their third game of the season, week 2 against Mizzou. That's where we'll find out a little bit more about the Jayhawks team. So we'll see. But good first step for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Good first step. And again, like, dude, I'll tell you, uh, seeing Kansas play the way that they did, and seeing Kansas State play the way that they did, and then all obviously, you hate to like point to the aftermath of a father and brother of the quarterback fight, but just the vibe shift between those two programs right now, at least in this exact moment in a vacuum, man. I might, we might have to flip the conversation for those two programs this season. Just an absolute turnaround.
The Kansas hasn't beat Kansas State in a long time, I believe. I'm gonna pull it up to fact check it, but I saw some of the Kansas fans starting to say they're gonna get one. Yeah, 16 in a row for Kansas State. That's a lot. That's pretty deep. The last
It's
time
got to come to an end.
yeah, last time Kansas got them was in 2008 in a game in Lawrence, and they're in Lawrence this year. So maybe we'll see the Sunflower showdown go the Jayhawks way.
That 2008 Kansas football team, that team, or was it 2007? I think I'm thinking 2007. That was the team that, like, yeah, 12-1. So 2008, interesting. 2007, they went 12-1 that year. They were ranked 7th in the AP poll. Like, they were just otherworldly, coming out of nowhere. So I think if you're Kansas, you're hoping for some 2007 vibes. Getting back in the win column in that rivalry game. The way those two programs looked over the weekend, I think Kansas fans should be feeling optimistic about their chance to get back in the win column there. But all right, dude. So let's transition to sort of the big picture. Now that we've got an idea of what 3 of these programs look like, with Iowa State, Kansas State, and Kansas. How do we sort of view the Big 12 picture now, Josh? Like, what do you make of the Big 12? How much did this change sort of our outlook for the year?
Not a whole ton. I do think you got to give some respect to Kansas. I think now maybe they set themselves up to be a contender. If I'm looking at teams that can win this conference, you got Utah, you have Baylor, you have Texas Tech, you have Iowa State, you have Arizona State, you now have Kansas, you have Kansas State. Things could get weird for the guys, and we're not going to. I don't even want to say it again. I said it over in the space, but those guys, TCU could get weird. So there's a lot. This conference is so open. There's such parity on that top half that really anything can happen. And when we talk about just the top half, that's where second to last picked Arizona State last year ended up winning the whole thing. So it's
right.
You don't really know what's going to happen. But I think honestly, I feel like Arlington's going to be comprised of 2 of these 4, and that's Utah, Baylor, Texas Tech, in Iowa State, and I had the winner of Farmageddon being that like kind of that fourth team.
Yeah.
Want to give a nod to Arizona State. I don't love their road schedule. And we'll see if they're able to, keep that going. But so that's somebody you just can't discount.
No, 100%. And with Arizona State, with all that they return, and the experience they gained last year, winning the championship, going to the playoff, having the quarterback back, like, it makes a lot of sense. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be really competitive. They bring back a number of players from last year's roster. So I think it's going to be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks how these teams develop. But I'm with you. I think Utah, Iowa State, I think those are two teams that I feel really good about. Texas Tech, Baylor, those are really kind of the four teams that I look at as potentially getting to 7-2 in the conference. I think that's going to be the mark in this conference, is getting to 7-2. I think it's going to be tough to avoid that second loss. I think if you can make it this year with only one loss in the conference, given the competitiveness in this league, especially at the top, with Arizona State, Baylor, BYU, if they figure out what they're not figure out, but if they find an answer at that quarterback spot, you've got Colorado, who is such a wild card to me. Like, I feel better about their defense than I do their offense, but still their skill positions, it's super fascinating to me. They've got one of the more talented left tackles, in Jordan Seaton, but he's going to have to make big strides. That offensive line in general is going to have to make even bigger strides to be where they need to be in order to contend. And now Kansas, looking pretty dangerous. Kansas State, are they going to be able to right the ship, after taking a really tough loss in week 0, right? You're out the gate down 0-1 in conference play to your bitter rival in the league. Like, that's tough. That's going to be tough on their psyche. So I'm curious to see how they respond these next couple of weeks. And then too, you've got TCU, who's going to be really, really dangerous as well. Obviously, Texas Tech. Like, this league is just so competitive this year. You're going to need depth. You're going to need elite talent at certain spots, at least a couple positions. And I think Utah has that, but they're going to need answers in order to get to the Big 12 title game. But I like, just after this first weekend of college football, I like what we've learned and sort of how it kind of shapes, the conversation around the league this year. All right. Let's talk quarterbacks. We just watched two of the top, or at least, two quarterbacks that I think were, in the conversation. One certainly is now, and now Jalen Daniels, with his performance looking good. What do you make of the quarterbacks in this league, and how do you see the top, in terms of the quarterback hierarchy in this league? And
yeah, I think we got a deep quarterback league. I think we got a lot of guys that can be really exciting. The way I'd probably round out my top 5 would be Sawyer Robertson. When he took over last year, Baylor was just a different beast. What they end on a 6-game winning streak. So I've got him slated at 1. I'd also be okay if my number 2 was placed at number 1, Sam Leavitt. I think he's going to take a step forward this year. I think he's going to have that opportunity and that need to take a step forward. Scattaboo, I think the number that's being thrown around is 39% of their offensive production last year. So with him gone, you obviously have the Army, Kanye Udo coming in, who will be an absolute dog for them in the backfield. But I think Sam Leavitt's going to have the opportunity to do more and might need to do more in some spots. So I got him number 2. I got Rocco Beck at number 3. Jalen Daniels at number 4, and I have to put our boy Devin Dampier. I believe his 595-pound squatting self is just going to absolutely do some things this year, and I'm just really excited for it. You got to think that it's Dampier in another year with Beck. Like, that's going to be a step forward, and having that offensive line, whether it's 8 seconds, 5 seconds, 4 seconds, I don't care. That's a lot of time to do stuff. And this dude is creative. He can do whatever he wants back there. So Dampier's gonna have a season, and we'll see. What about you?
Yeah, so I've got top two flipped. I've got Sam Levitt number one, obviously the returning champ in the league. With what he did, right? So obviously last year's team, it was Cam Scattaboo. He did so much for that team. He did the heavy lifting for that offense. But I thought Sam Levitt, being down there in Tempe, watching him and how he executed and the way that he stepped up in key moments, I was really impressed by. And so, I'm interested to see what sort of improvements he makes because he is going to have to be better than he was last year. He was really efficient because he was able to be efficient, right? Because they had Cam Scattaboo, doing a lot of the heavy lifting for that team. So I have him one, but I'm really interested to see what he's going to look like with the spotlight entirely on him, right? Sort of the same thing, same sort of conversation with Avery Johnson, right? I thought he had to be special this year. They gave him all the pieces. We saw a couple of those pieces emerge, on Saturday, make some plays at least. But, I come away with more questions about Avery and where he's at in terms of what sort of trajectory he's on right now. So, um, with Levitt, I have him one, but we'll see what that looks like with the spotlight fully on him. Sort of like you said, came in like gangbusters, completely flipped that program around with the way that he executed, the way he threw the ball, created a lot of plays down the field for that team. Just did so much to open up that offense. They have one of the top running backs in Bryson Washington as well, who was one of the top producers, and due in large part to what Robertson's ability throwing the ball did to open up space and all that sort of stuff. So Robertson number two. I'm going to make a change. So I published a quarterback ranking earlier in the summer. I think it was back in June. I had Avery Johnson number three. I'm putting Rocco Beck here. Obviously, he just looked. Obviously the stats. I think he ended with like a 50% completion rate. But again, we're talking drops, and I think there were a couple of really painful drops for Beck. He made some great throws, and just looked like he looked like Brock Purdy. Like that's what I was like, man, he's just
The,
making good decisions,
the
like
thought in my head too.
it's an easy one. It's an
Yeah,
easy one. But it's he looked good. He just looked like he knew what he was doing. He was confident, he was decisive, he looked good. And so I'm gonna put him three. I'm gonna put a big change here. I'm gonna buy a little bit of Daniels. Coming off week zero. Obviously, it's Fresno State, and they're going through a major rebuild as well. But I was really impressed with Jalen Daniels. I'm gonna move him up to number four with the way that he looked and the way that offense performed. Like you said, they could have put up 50 if they wanted to. They look good. And then I'm gonna put Devin Dampier at number five. I'm really excited to see what he does going into year two under Beck. To your point, right? Having that experience in the offense, he's starting from a bit of an advantage where his coordinator already knows his strengths, his weaknesses, where he can improve. That's huge for Dampier going into his, coming up to Utah, coming up to a level to the Big 12. I think that's really going to benefit him. And again, like you mentioned, the offensive line in front of him, he's going to have a lot of time to find open receivers. And what was really interesting doing a deep dive on Dampier is when he had a clean pocket, he executed at a really high level. I think he completed 63% of his passes, threw for, I think, over 2,000 yards. So the majority of his snaps last year in New Mexico were from a clean pocket. Part of that was him buying time. But I think operating behind this offensive line, he's going to have a clean pocket, and that's going to really bode well for his game. The most important thing, 9 to 5 touchdown to interception ratio from a clean pocket. I think that's going to be the key for him, operating behind this offensive line. So that's what I've got. Levitt, Robertson, Beck, Daniels, Dampier, my top five. We'll see how this changes as we get into week one. But man, a lot of fun getting some Big 12 action. Let's now talk about what we learned from the weekend and how it applies to Utah. I think that's always kind of an interesting exercise to go through because we're all chomping at the bit for for Utah football. We've rehearsed and rehashed the conversations over and over again about Utah specifically. We've talked a lot about them throughout fall camp, but now we have football that is applicable to Utah because of the Big 12 context, and we can take away some things that I think can apply to Utah this weekend. So, when we're looking ahead to this game, to this matchup against UCLA this weekend, what did we learn from the action this past weekend that, maybe what we're hoping to see, what we're hoping maybe not to see from Utah this weekend against the Bruins?
Yeah, I would say I'd like to take a page out of Iowa State's book and just not forget about the run. Let's just say that UCLA comes out hot and they have some offense and stuff like that. Like, we don't need to start trying to sling the ball. Like, we got to remember this. This is a place that we know how to run the football. I know no two teams are the same, but don't forget the run. Run the damn ball.
Yeah, 100%. That is, I think, the biggest thing. And with this offensive line, you feel good about your chances to get some movement there. Where, again, you stay committed to it, and you saw the improvement quarter by quarter with Iowa State. You can expect something similar with Utah. I think they stay committed to it. They wear you down. They just continue to pound you. They hit you with the jab and wear you down. So that is, I think, the biggest key. Another key that I'm really interested in following is, this defensive secondary for Utah with Teo Johnson, with Smith Snowden, Scooby Davis, having that experience, right? Having those guys with, the knowledge that they have, the chemistry that they have, the reps that they have together, I think is going to be really important, because we saw a handful of times by both teams coverage breakdowns. And I think when looking at this matchup specifically with Nico Iamaleava and Tino Sunseri bringing his offense, if you look at Sunseri's credentials, he's done a tremendous job with the quarterbacks under his tutelage. And so that is one thing that I think is going to be really important, is that, Utah's experience in the defensive secondary, that it shows up in game one. You can't make those sort of mistakes, because Iamaleava and Sunseri, they have that sort of potential to expose you and take advantage of those opportunities. You can't give them easy ones like Kansas or like Iowa State did to Kansas State. You just can't do that.
No, 100%. What do you make about UCLA's offensive line just being a totally new group? That's got to be something that Scally's just drooling over, right?
I think so. I think so. I think, this offensive line, like you said, five new starters, and for me, one of the biggest keys in this game is going to be pressure rate, and that is going to be important for Utah to, because it speaks to being in those situations to get the green light to get after the quarterback, right? You've got to be able to stop the run to get that green light, and so, Logan Fano, Cash Dillon, Paul Fitzgerald, John Henry Daly, Lance Holzclaw, all the guys, right? I want to see them get after it. I want to see them get pressure, get into the backfield. I think that's going to be a really big element, which again also plays a hand in the secondary and their success, right? So it's all going to play and work together. But I think with Iamaleava getting to Westwood when he did, and kind of the lack of time that he's had in the offense, there's a real possibility, real good potential for Scally to put together a game plan, especially with the veterans that he has, on this unit, where he can do some fun things and he can get after Iamaleava, and I think that's going to be really, really important. What do you think of it?
I, we like to try to keep things close to the vest early in the season, so that's where I'm just like, are we going to show much? Are we going to dial up the blitzes, create some chaos? I'd love to see it. I think this game's so
Yeah.
important. I think if we can go into Pasadena and absolutely slap them silly, it'll do a lot. It'll do a lot for morale on all fronts. So I'd love to see us expose that. They also aren't good on the defensive front, so I just don't know where they're gonna. They got nothing in the trenches, brother.
No, that's a thing, is like, it's so hard getting a feel for what UCLA is going to be, because it is literally being patched together in so many different ways. a new quarterback, new offensive line. I think they return a couple skill players, but the running back room, it's almost new. Defensive line, linebacker, defensive secondary is entirely new. You've got a new offensive coordinator. So this past week, I've been watching Indiana film, Tennessee film. I've been watching, just a bunch of different stuff to get a feel for UCLA, dude. It is just a jambalaya of prep. And it's, Scally, he's going to put in the time. And to your point, you made a great point that I think this game has the importance where you have to be a little more willing to be aggressive, to be exotic, and dial up some things potentially. Now, obviously, with the sort of athletes that they've got in that defensive end room, and you hope that they can simply take advantage of that offensive line, and if you can do that, getting pressure on Iam Aliava with just your base, man, that would be huge for Utah. And that is certainly something I think we're all interested to see is what these ends, what this line looks like and how it performs, because that's going to be a big key. It's a big question mark going into the year, but I think that's going to be a big one is how does that defensive line specifically perform and how do they handle things? So, all right, we'll talk more UCLA throughout the week. Gonna have on a UCLA guest to dive into into more in depth conversation about the Bruins. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk more in depth about the matchup specifically. But let's talk big picture with Utah. Now that we're through fall camp, we're knocking on the door of action here. What is your ceiling and what is your floor for Utah this year?
Yeah, I mean, if you follow the good old glass half I don't shy away from the Kool-Aid. I've got my projection out there, 11-1 with the sole loss to Baylor. That is my ceiling. I had us at 10-2 at one point, losing to West Virginia, just early road game, cross country. I gave us that W. So ceiling 11-1, and I have us there if we can stay healthy and avoid the injury woes that we've had the last couple years. I'd like to see Dampier be able to find consistency on some of those quick passes. I think we're going to want to run the football a lot, and I think we're going to be extremely successful with that. But there are going to be moments where teams start to stack the box. And when they stack the box, Dampier needs to be able to roll out, get outside, and find some of those quick outlets and get rid of the ball quick and with accuracy. And if he can do that, and we have some ability to make defenses pay some respect to that intermediate and deep ball, 11-1 is there. You just look at like how last season went. We weren't that far off from being a really good football team with some of the worst offensive play. We should never have to deal with offensive play that bad again. A floor to go pretty dark is 5-7. There's three. There are three gimmies on this schedule, and I hate to get to that be that polar opposite, show that contrast, but there's three gimmies on this schedule: Cal Poly, Wyoming, and Cincy. I don't think we lose those three games on any planet. Outside of that, it's pretty tough sledding, especially if injury woes continue, especially if this offense doesn't jump from that Mountain West to Big 12 play. But I don't think we're going to find ourselves when we're recapping this season. I don't think we're going to be talking about the floor. I think we're going to be a little closer to that ceiling.
Yeah, I think how I see it, I think ceiling 10-2. I think there's enough talent here, to get there. I think they're going to need answers. They're going to need pretty big answers at some spots. Wide receiver, defensive tackle. We're going to have to see some really good things from those two position groups in order to reach our ceiling. And look, like, going through the schedule, if they do find their go-to receiver, if they have Tobias Merriweather emerge as that guy, if they have Larry Simmons emerge as that sort of Dorian Singer type, then, based on how they perform, that could potentially get you to that 11-1. But I think for me, I'm more comfortable with the ceiling of 10-2 because, again, this conference is really competitive, and that week in, week out, competition where everybody brings their lunch pail. You get no weeks off in this league. Certainly Utah has more talent. They've got, premier talent at some positions that other programs just don't have. But all of these programs are really competitive and bring their lunch bell, much like Utah always does, right? And so I think for me, I think a floor, I see the floor a little bit differently. Obviously, injuries change the conversation, but in terms of floor, with everybody staying healthy, I see 7-5 as the floor, because I do think the talent, the ability of the offensive line is just so strong. I think there's enough, on that defensive side of the ball where you can count on them to meet, potentially even exceed last year's performance, especially if you get at least somewhat complementary offense. If as long as Utah gets that, I think 7-5 is the floor for Utah. But again, that's no injuries. Injuries always change the conversation. So for me, I see 7-5 as the floor, 10-2 is the ceiling. But they're going to need answers regardless, especially at that wide receiver spot. And so looking at the schedule, what are the three games that are going to define this season for you?
Yeah, I think it all starts game one, UCLA. I think that's a total bar setter. You got to see the energy. You got to see some stuff. You got to feel good about it. Obviously, we could come in and win a 21-17, not that sexy of a win kind of thing, but and still have a great season. But I think coming in and that UCLA game, if we can go in and really make a statement, that sets up things well. From there, the Texas Tech game's very important. First conference game, that kind of sets things up. There's a lot of talent on that roster. Everybody knows about Texas Tech, no doubt about it. That's a huge home game. And then the next game on the schedule, we get a bye week, and then we have ASU. Being able to win those two back to back, I think that means like, hey, we're open for business and it's real. I don't want to say that after a Texas Tech win because we were ready to say that after an Oklahoma State win last year. So I need that follow-up win against Arizona State to know it's real. And I think if we get that, sky's the limit, baby.
That's a great point. I've got Texas Tech as a pretty important one in terms of defining the season and what this team can potentially be. We're going to learn a lot about Utah against that Texas Tech team. I think BYU, I think that game is going to really kind of show us, where we're at with Utah, and going down to Provo. Obviously, that month of football for Utah is very favorable in the sense that they're going to be at home or they're going to be 50 miles down the road, right? So I think this is a big opportunity for Utah. They've lost the last two, and that one is going to be a big one. So that's one, and then the other one that I have is at Baylor. Getting into the month of November with Kansas State, with the loss in week 0, sort of changed it for me. I think Baylor is now, with that schedule that they have, with with what they have, with Sawyer Robinson and everybody around him, that game's going to be pretty tough on the road. So those are the three games that I've got as the biggest defining moments of the season potentially for Utah, is Tech, BYU, and Baylor. Now, getting to the conversation with individuals, let's talk through a handful of guys that maybe a handful of things that we want to see this season. I'll start. I think I want to see Dampier own at least a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's a big thing for me. Improving that number, that's going to be key for him going into year 2 under Bick. I want to see that number improve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he'll be afforded that opportunity, and that'll come easier just without him having to force so much and be relied on to do so much in this offense with a defense that has his back, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
One thing I want to see, special teams, all around, returns, coverage, kicking the ball out of the back of the end zone. Or if we want to leave it short, like I just want the coverage to be good. I'm sick of that. I want to see field goals. I want to get back to the punting. I want all of it. I want special teams to be back, because I think that's one of those underrated pieces that is at the core of how we found our success over these years. Um,
100%.
yeah. QB1 healthy all season. That's something I think everybody wants
That's
to
a
see. We
must.
need it. We
That's a
deserve
must.
it.
Yep.
So a happy ending for Kyle. If that's what his plan is, I'm always of the mindset that Kyle can do whatever he wants. He is the father. But I'd love to see us get a good season and a happy ending so he can do whatever he wants.
Amen. Amen. Another thing I want to see, one takeaway, at least one takeaway in every game. Utah did not accomplish that last year, and the one game they didn't do that was BYU. So, gonna be important.
That
Gonna be
that
important.
that that one drop on that one drive could
Oh
have done it.
man.
All right,
Oh.
all right.
Yeah, dude. He had it right in Alabama. Come on now.
Man.
You didn't see that play? You didn't see
Oh,
that play, Alabama?
I actually got hit up
Right
by
off
an
his hands.
Alabama guy. Yeah, I had an Alabama guy hit me up to ask some questions about Calhoun, and I was like, "Let me tell you what, he's a cornerback, not a receiver." And I
Yeah, he
proceeded to
dropped a
tell,
pretty important one.
"Yep,
Man, I'm fired up. All right. Let's talk through a few rapid fire things here. We'll go through some over unders that we got or I got submitted to us. Or actually, do you want to talk through any individual players? Anybody else?
I I just want to spotlight Landon Barton. I really want to see him just absolutely like he's no stranger to us, right? But I want to see him
Yeah.
storm onto the scene and be that absolute dude. You remember Devin Lloyd coming back for that final year, which really allowed him to push that draft stock and absolutely skyrocket up people's draft boards. I want that for Landon Barton so bad. I want him to come in and be an absolute bully on defense. I think we were missing some of that for a large chunk of last year. Toward the end of the season, Lander started to come on, get a little bit better. He was a little banged up at times, but you start to see Lander move a little bit more freely. And I really want to see a big year out of him for him and for our defense's sake. I think the defense isn't relying upon it, but I think we're going to see that out of Lander Barton, just knowing that Barton family and just their dogs, all of them, man.
100%. I think that's a great point. I think Lander expectations are high for him, obviously. And, he knows what last year was, and it was not up to those expectations that he has of himself. And I think he's excited and he's chomping at the bit to kind of, send that message as well. Like he's still a dude. And I'm really excited. Like, we've seen it time and time again when these linebackers get to year 3, get to year 4, that's when they really start to put it all together. And I think that's what we'll see from Lander this year. He's so dynamic, so versatile. Obviously, the offensive potential is one thing, but he can do so much for Utah just on the defensive side alone. And I'm excited to see him unleashed a little bit more this year now that he's fully healthy and fully confident. Like that's a thing that we don't talk about enough from injuries. Obviously we talk about it with like the ACL and all that sort of stuff, but a foot injury, all of these injuries, it takes time to regain confidence in what you're doing. And I think for Lander, that finally came in that final month when he just said, "F it, I'm just playing. I'm not going to be thinking about it anymore." And so I'm excited. I think he broke through that mental barrier in that final month, and we'll see him going. But yeah, great point. I think we all want to see that from Lander. So, all right, let's get to some rapid fire over unders, and we'll just hit it quick. Right? Let's start off with the big name, Devin Dampier. Over under 2,700 passing yards.
Under.
Under. Okay. All right. I'm going to go over just slightly. Just slightly. 1.5 touchdown interception ratio. Over under.
Over.
Over. Okay. I'm going to go over as well. Like I said, I want to see 2-1. I want to see that. Over under 5.5 sacks allowed or given up.
Under.
Under. Yep, under. 9.5 rushing touchdowns for Dampier this season.
Over.
Over. I'm going to go under. I'm going to go under on that one. Okay. All right. Wayshawn Parker, over under 1,100 rushing yards.
We'll take the over there.
I'm going to take the over as well. All right, 9.5 touchdowns this year.
I'll take the over there as well.
Yeah, I'm taking the over. That's where I sort of see the difference here and why I sort of I take the under on Dampier. I'm taking the over on Parker. I think he's going to be pretty productive this year.
Yeah, I'm second guessing myself, but we're rapid fire, so we keep going.
We'll keep going. You're right.
Keep going.
All right. The top two receivers for Utah combined for at least 69 receptions this year. Oh, actually, wait, no. I did this wrong. So here, I'll explain it. I went back to 2017. And the reason I went to 2017, that was the Troy Taylor iPhone offense. They had Darren Carrington. And so that's sort of who I'm using as a model for this number. So over under 69 receptions for Utah's leading receiver this season.
I'm going to go under.
I'm going to go under as well. I had another idea, it was the top two receivers combining for 90 receptions, and I think that I'm going to take the over.
Yes, I would take the over. I think there's more of a committee approach to all of our receivers, tight ends, receiving. So yeah.
Okay. Over under 800 receiving yards for the top receiver.
Yeah, so I'd stay on the under there.
I'm going to go over, but like I'm thinking like 801. Like
okay.
It's down to the wire, fourth quarter, first down conversion on a 3rd and 7, like with 2 minutes to go. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like it's a little dicey. All right. Over under 5 touchdown receptions.
I'm going to go over.
I'll go over 6. I'm thinking 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, that feels right.
All right, team sacks. So I went back, the last couple years, going back, I think to 2017, and it's interesting, these sack numbers. Right, Utah's had some great years. I think they had over 40 just a couple years ago, either 21 or 22. They fall typically mid 30s. Last year was a down year, 24.5. So I'm going to put the over under on team sacks at 29.5 this year.
I'm going to go under.
I think I'm going to go under as well. And the reason, I think I'm hung up on these Big 12 offenses. They put such an emphasis on getting the ball out, on these, quick drops, 3-step drop, get it out. And just there's not enough time. But Logan Fano, who I think is going to be the leading sack guy for Utah this year, over under, I put 11.5, but now that I'm saying it out loud, that feels way too rich. So I'm going to say 9.5. Over under 9.5 sacks this year for Logan Fano.
I'm going to put him at 10, so I'm going to take the over.
Okay. I'm going to take the over as well. And I'm thinking 11.
Let's go.
All right. Rushing yards allowed per game, 130.
I'm going to go under.
I'm going under as well. Last year, I think they were 125 per game. So, you get some improvement from the defensive line over the course of the year. You get your linebackers playing well. I think you can do a good job against the run game. All right. Dylan Curtis attempting at least a 55-yard field goal. Does he attempt 55-yard or 54 yards or longer this year? That doesn't make sense.
I think he's going to hit it. I think we're going to trot him out for a 60.
Going into the half. So too.
Going into the half. So I just see it. We're going to kick some stupid field goal, and it's going to go in. We're going to love it. And then Bama's going to try to come by our kicker.
Maybe the over-under is 61 yards. Do we attempt something longer than 60 yards?
I'm still going over, Steve.
Dude, he's got such a leg, dude. He's got such a leg. Like, it's crazy. He was attempted 70-yarders. He's got film from practice, but he was like, he's crazy, dude. He's got so much juice. All right, defensive players combining for at least 15 catches. You going over or under?
I think Smith Snowden will have that himself.
Ooh, okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to say I'll say over as well. I'll say over as well. I think the two I think defensive players combined for over 15 catches. Yeah, I think I feel good about that. So, all right, man. That was fun. Dude, I'm excited. So that'll do it for us, man. We went way longer than what we were anticipating. We just, like to chat. So, Josh, man, I'm so excited. Like I said, to start the show, to have you on. This is going to be a lot of fun as we, get into it more and more and develop. Just it's going to be a lot of fun, man. I'm super excited.
Yeah. No, I'm super happy to be here. Very thankful for the opportunity to talk ball and be a part of this. It's really cool. I don't really know how to put all that into words, but I'm very appreciative. This is crazy. I know this is real now because I'm actually sitting here and recording with you, but it's all I've been thinking about since you and I talked on the phone and started chatting it up. So it's cool to be here, and I'm looking forward to having an awesome season with you and everyone else.
Yeah, man, it'll be a good time. So that'll put a bow on it for this episode. But I'll be back on Tuesday, and then we're gonna be back Wednesday night. We going live? Are we gonna go live Wednesday night, Josh? Are we going
I
live?
heard we're I heard we're doing it live.
Okay, all right, man. Like I said, excited for what's to come. For myself, Steve Bartle, for Josh Bennett. This has been the Utah Blockcast. Signing off.